They parted, Slanetti heading for the Oval Office. As Stathis continued down the hall, he saw Slanetti's secretary come out of their suite and close the door, her handbag over her arm. She smiled at Stathis, and he nodded back. As she walked on down the hall, he waited until she was out of sight, glanced at his watch once, and since the hall was now empty, tried the door. It was open, as he expected. He rushed inside and closed the door, breathing heavily. As he went into Slanetti's office, his eyes went immediately to the desk and the open files spread out on top of it. Files Slanetti obviously hadn't thought anyone would see because he expected to be back in his office in a few minutes. Stathis went around the desk and quickly looked them over. Each folder was labeled with a congressman's name, his state, and the word Keystone. Again that Keystone, he thought to himself. He opened John Fulton's file. His eyes grew wider and wider as he skimmed down the piece of paper containing the basic facts on Fulton, which would eventually go to the liaison chosen to approach the congressman from Oklahoma. John Fulton, he found himself saying out loud, disbelieving what he read. He glanced at his watch. Slanetti was always prompt. He still had a few minutes. He looked into Neil Scott's file. Again his mouth opened as though he would say something out loud, but he didn't. His brow wrinkled because he couldn't understand what he was reading. He actually did understand clearly what was going on. He just couldn't bring himself to admit that President Norwalk, his close personal friend, would ever condone such muckraking for political gain. Then he picked up the file on Deaver Moldo, the congressman who had just voted for Sinclair, glanced once at it, and admitted to himself what was happening. Keystone was clear to him, an across-the-board effort to sway the election of the President of the United States by means of extortion, bribery, and blackmail. Stathis froze over the files, petrified by the impact of what he discovered, scared to death at the thought of having to make up his mind what to do about it. He could not believe Norwalk would instruct Slanetti or anyone else to carry out such activities. At first he tried to convince himself that Slanetti was doing it all on his own, but the president's actions covering up for him, his unwillingness to discuss the House battle except in general terms, which had caused most people on the staff to think Norwalk was remaining elegantly above the fray, convinced him that Norwalk knew intimately everything Slanetti was up to. He suddenly realized he had to get out of the office undetected immediately. He bolted for the hallway door. As he reached for the doorknob, he heard it turn and jumped behind the door as it opened, pinning his back against the wall, all 6 feet 4 inches of his broad-shouldered, dignified body ramrod straight and sweating like a coal miner, his forehead shiny and wet with excited perspiration. Slanetti walked in looking at papers in his hand and went directly into his office, closing the door behind him. Stathis frozen dead, only his eyes and sweat glands seeming to work as he watched Slanetti's back and tried to hold his breath back. Stathis closed his eyes and breathed a heavy sigh of welcome relief before immediately cracking the door to see who was in the hall and walking out into it, back to his office to think. After a few minutes, sitting and standing, pacing back and forth, he decided he should go to lunch as normal and left his office. As he passed Slanetti's door, it opened and Slanetti popped out, startling him. Slanetti looked at him and was puzzled by the wild expression of fright in his eyes. "Did I scare you, Eric?" he said. "I'm sorry." Stathis regained his composure. No, Phil, just gave me a start. Just on my way to lunch." He recalled that he told Slanetti he was on his way to lunch before. "I forgot something a minute ago." "I'm going to lunch, too. Want to go together?" "No, Phil, no," he said, trying to smile. "I already have an engagement. Thanks anyway." They walked out together. Stathis had his driver take him to his favorite bar.